The discovery, the wind howled across the Antarctic wasteland like a living thing, carrying ice crystals that stung Dr. Elena Vasquez's face, despite her protective gear. She squinted through her goggles at the readings on her handheld scanner, watching the numbers dance in ways that defied every law of physics she had studied for the past 15 years. Alina had come to Antarctica as part of a routine geological survey, searching for mineral deposits beneath the ice. What she found instead would change the course of human history forever. The scanner in her gloved hands was designed to detect electromagnetic anomalies, but the readings it displayed now were impossible. Energy signatures that pulsed in perfect mathematical sequences, frequencies that shouldn't exist in nature. And most disturbing of all, patterns that seemed to respond to her presence. She knelt in the snow, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air as she carefully calibrated her equipment. Dr. Marcus Chen, her research partner, had called her crazy when she insisted on investigating the anomaly alone. The rest of their team was back at base camp, analyzing ice core samples and debating the implications of climate change. They had no idea that Alina was about to discover something that would make global warming seem like a minor inconvenience. The scanner's beeping grew more intense as she moved forward, following the signal like a technological bloodhound. Each step brought her closer to something that her scientific mind insisted couldn't exist. The energy readings were growing stronger, more complex, as if whatever lay beneath the ice was awakening to her approach. Elena's boots crunched through the snow as she created a small ridge overlooking a depression in the ice field. Below her, the snow seemed different somehow, more crystalline, catching the pale Antarctic sunlight in ways that hurt her eyes. She pulled out her camera and began documenting everything, knowing that what she was about to discover would need verification that even she might not believe later. The scanner's readings spiked suddenly, nearly overloading the device's sensors. Alina steadied herself against the bitter wind and looked down at the numbers scrolling across the small screen. The energy output was equivalent to a small nuclear reactor, but there was no heat signature, no radiation, just pure electromagnetic force pulsing in patterns that resembled mathematical equations more than natural phenomena. She began her descent into the depression, moving carefully on the slippery ice. As she got closer to the source of the readings, Alina noticed that the ice beneath her feet was changing. What had appeared to be normal frozen water from a distance revealed itself to be something far more extraordinary up close. The ice was perfectly clear, almost crystalline, and within it she could see shapes that didn't belong in any earthly formation. Alina dropped to her knees and brushed away loose snow from the surface. Beneath the thin layer of fresh powder, the ice was like a window into something incredible. Embedded within the frozen water were structures that looked technological, geometric patterns that spoke of intelligence and purpose. They seemed to glow with their own internal light, pulsing in rhythm with the readings on her scanner. Her hands shook as she pulled out a small heating device, designed for melting ice samples. Alina knew she was probably violating a dozen scientific protocols by not waiting for the full team, but the energy readings were growing stronger by the minute. Whatever was down there was becoming more active, and she sensed that this moment might be unique, a window of opportunity that might not come again. The ice melted under the focused heat, revealing more of the structures beneath. They weren't made of any material Alina recognized. The surfaces seemed to shift between metallic and crystalline, reflecting light in ways that hurt her brain to observe directly. As more ice melted away, She realized she was looking at what could only be described as technology, but technology that operated on principles completely foreign to human understanding. Elena's scanner began emitting a steady tone, indicating that the energy source was now less than a meter below her position. She worked frantically with the heating device, knowing that her equipment batteries wouldn't last much longer in the extreme cold. The wind picked up, threatening to bury her work in fresh snow, but she pressed on, driven by a curiosity that had defined her entire career. As the last layer of ice melted away, Elena found herself staring at something that would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life. Rising from the ancient ice was a crystalline structure about the size of a basketball, but its surface was covered in patterns that seemed to move and shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. The crystal pulsed with an inner light that cycled through colors she couldn't name, and when she held her scanner near it, the device went completely silent. Elena reached out with one gloved hand, then stopped herself. Every instinct screamed that touching the object would be dangerous, but her scientific training demanded that she gather as much data as possible. She pulled out a sample container and carefully chipped away small fragments of ice that had been in direct contact with the crystal. If she could analyze these samples back at the lab, she might begin to understand what she had discovered. The crystal's pulsing grew more intense as she worked around it, and Elena began to notice that the patterns of light seemed to be responding to her movements. When she moved to the left, certain sections of the crystal glowed brighter. When she stepped back, different areas activated. It was as if the object was studying her just as intently as she was studying it. Elena's radio crackled to life, Marcus's voice cutting through the static. He was checking in from base camp, wanting to know her status and whether she had found anything interesting. Elena looked down at the impossible crystal, at the readings on her scanner that defied explanation, and realized that interesting was a significant understatement. She was about to radio back when the crystal suddenly flared with brilliant light, and her scanner began displaying readings that made her earlier measurements look primitive by comparison. Something was happening to the crystal, and Elena sensed that her discovery was about to become far more complicated than she had ever imagined. The patterns of light were accelerating, cycling through sequences that looked almost like mathematical formulas written in pure energy. Elena began recording everything with her camera, knowing that no one would believe her without documentation. Wind died down for a moment, creating an eerie silence that was broken only by the soft humming emanating from the crystal. Elena realized that the object was producing sound, a complex harmony of frequencies that seemed to resonate with something deep in her bones. She felt a strange compulsion to reach out and touch the surface, to make contact with whatever intelligence had created this impossible artifact. As she knelt there in the Antarctic snow, surrounded by evidence of technology that shouldn't exist, Elena Vasquez understood that her life had just taken a turn that would lead her far from the comfortable world of academic research and into realms that challenged everything. Humanity thought it knew about its place in the universe. The sick hands trembled as she activated her emergency communication array, but not from the Antarctic cold. The crystal had been pulsing for 3 hours now, and her readings indicated that it was transmitting something into space. Not random electromagnetic noise, but organized, purposeful signals that followed complex mathematical patterns. She was witnessing first contact, and she was completely alone. The base camp was 40 kilometers away, too far to reach before her equipment batteries died in the extreme temperature. Elena had to make a choice: abandon the discovery to save herself, or risk everything to document what might be humanity's most important moment. She chose to stay, knowing that the data she gathered in the next few hours could change the course of human civilization. Alina set up her remaining equipment in a semicircle around the crystal, creating a makeshift laboratory in the middle of the Antarctic wasteland. Her laptop computer was running on auxiliary power, recording everything while simultaneously analyzing the signal patterns. What she discovered made her question everything she thought she knew about mathematics and physics. The crystal wasn't just transmitting random signals. It was broadcasting coordinates, star charts, and what appeared to be a countdown sequence. Elena's translation software, designed to decode complex mathematical relationships, identified the coordinates as pointing to a region of space approximately 47 light-years from Earth. The countdown was more disturbing, indicating that something would happen in exactly 72 hours. Elena's radio buzzed with another check-in from Marcus, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. How could she explain that she had discovered an alien artifact that was actively communicating with something in deep space? How could she tell her colleague that Earth might be about to receive visitors, and that she was the only person who knew about it? The crystal's transmissions were growing stronger, and Elena's equipment was picking up something else, something that made her blood run cold. There were response signals coming from space, faint but detectable, following the same mathematical patterns as the crystal's broadcasts. Something was answering, and it was getting closer. Alina worked frantically to decode more of the transmissions, pushing her equipment beyond its designed limits. The signals contained layers of information, some of which her computers could analyze and others that remained completely incomprehensible. She was able to identify what appeared to be technical specifications, possibly for some kind of spacecraft or technology, but the mathematics involved were unlike anything inhuman. Knowledge. As the hours passed, Alina noticed changes in the crystal's behavior. The pulsing patterns were becoming more complex, almost urgent, as if the artifact was trying to communicate something important before time ran out. Alina began to suspect that the crystal wasn't just a communication device, but also some kind of beacon or warning system. Her laptop suddenly chimed with an alert. The translation software had identified recurring patterns in the signals that resembled known mathematical constants, but arranged in ways that suggested a level of scientific understanding far beyond human achievement. Alina realized she was looking at formulas that described technologies humanity wouldn't develop for centuries, if ever. The crystal flared brighter than ever before, and Elena's instruments detected a massive energy surge. Something was responding to the beacon, something big enough to generate electromagnetic signatures visible from Earth. Alina checked her calculations 3 times before accepting the impossible truth. There was a spacecraft approaching Earth's solar system, traveling at speeds that violated everything she understood about physics. Elena's radio crackled with static, then cleared to reveal Marcus's worried voice calling for her emergency status. This time she answered, knowing that she couldn't handle this discovery alone anymore. Her voice shook as she tried to explain what she had found, but Marcus's responses quickly shifted from concern to disbelief to demands that she return to base camp immediately. What Alina didn't tell Marcus was that her equipment had detected other signals, fainter transmissions that seemed to originate from various points around Earth. The crystal wasn't unique. There were others, hidden in remote locations around the planet, all awakening simultaneously and all broadcasting the same coordinates into space. Whatever was coming had been expected, planned for, by intelligences that had prepared for this moment long before humanity existed, Alina packed her equipment with shaking hands, knowing that she had perhaps 6 hours before the Antarctic weather would make travel impossible. The crystal's transmissions were reaching a crescendo, and her final readings suggested that the approaching spacecraft would arrive within Earth's solar system in less than 48 hours. As she prepared to leave the site, Alina made a decision that would define the rest of her life. Instead of reporting her discovery through official channels, she would take her data directly to the media, to scientists who could act quickly, to anyone who might be able to prepare humanity for what was coming. The governments of the world had protocols for many disasters, but Alina doubted they had plans for first contact with an alien intelligence that possessed technology centuries ahead of human science. Alina took one last look at the crystal, still pulsing with alien light, still transmitting its urgent messages to the stars. She realized that her role as a simple research scientist was over, whether she wanted it or not. She had become humanity's first ambassador to whatever intelligence was responding to the beacon's call. The responsibility was terrifying, but Alina knew that the next few days would determine whether that first contact would lead to humanity's greatest triumph or its final chapter. The wind picked up again as Alina began her journey back toward base camp, carrying her data and the knowledge that everything was about to change. Behind her, the crystal continued its transmission, calling to the stars and receiving answers that would soon reshape the destiny of every living thing on Earth. Asterisk.